Lyon is the Managing Director at Shark Shield, a company that markets a device that's the only scientifically proven and independently tested shark deterrent worldwide. And he joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
A lot of people who are very keen to get out in the water will be very pleased about this morning. But just tell us, what is Shark Shield?
Sure. Well, look, the product's not for everybody. The product that you're seeing in front of us here today was developed nearly 20 years ago, and it's for spear fishermen, scuba divers, and there is a new product coming out for surfing that's more appropriate. But sharks, like all animals, have various capabilities to hunt their food. So usually acoustics is the best, long distance. Then they have sight and smell, obviously, but they have this other sense that we don't have, and it's the ability to sense an electrical pulse, so a heartbeat. But it's super close range, half a metre. The same as you and I would use touch in the dark to find someone. They use it up to about 50 centimetres to a metre. And so what Shark Shield does, it creates a very large, powerful electric field. And the physics of it are that the large electrodes and the distance apart need to be quite big because you're dealing with quite a big animal. And so the field, if you could see, it looks in shape like a football, about 6 metres by 4 metres. Shark comes in, hits that super powerful electrical field, over-sensitises those little gel-filled sacs in its snout called ampulla of Lorenzini, and it flees the area. And it's as simple as that.
So this has been something that's been developing over the past couple of decades.
Absolutely.
Who's been testing it and showing that it is actually working?
That's a very good question. If you remember Ron and Val Taylor,
yeah.
Yeah, like Australia's Jacques Cousteau, if you like. They did the testing in the early 90s with a chap called Ian Gordon, or had a program called Ian Shark Gordon. And then the New South Wales DPI scientist Vic Pettimore did some testing. There's a research paper from some work he did. And then Charlie Houveniers out of SADA in South Australia did some research in 2012. And more recently, about to release in the new year, the University of Western Australia Ocean Institute spent nearly 2.5 years and $700,000 testing all deterrents. And the only deterrent that proved effective up to 90% of the time was Shark Shield.
So what sort of other things are out there in the mix?
Oh, there's some crazy things. There's some crazy things, actually. In fact, I saw in the newspaper last Sunday, I think it was the Ironman event, have gone with these little wristbands. And I doubt whether you could find a CSIRO scientist or a university scientist that would say that they are effective, because there are some physics around the size of the field you've got to create. And so, I think it's an issue for the ACCC to consider, well, what is on the market and what are people being told about these devices as being effective or not effective? Because there's no science, research behind some of them at all. In fact, I would argue the smartphone would offer you more protection than some of these devices, frankly.
Dial 000.
Exactly, yeah. Dial 000. Exactly.
So how practical, though, would it be for everyone to have their own individual...
I think unpractical is the truth of the matter. And I think that, the media and the Discovery Channel Shark Week, which I've heard is moving to Shark Month now, the hysteria around sharks is unwarranted. And I think the last thing we need is our kids not going to surf lifesaving and joining in the nippers. I think we want our kids out surfing, enjoying the adventures of the world and the ocean, and I think the hysteria is not warranted. I really do believe that. So I think that if you're going to do an activity that could place you at risk, spearfishing, diving, surfing in a remote location, dawn and dusk, those sorts of things, if there's an opportunity to reduce that risk, then here is something that will reduce that risk.
So is it possible for this to be applied more on a broader scale?
Absolutely. I think over time the technology will develop like everything. There are some physics around the size that constrain it. We're working with a company here in New South Wales down Sussex Inlet, Ocean and Earth, one of the world's largest surf hardware brands, and Tom Carroll, 2 times world champion. And we have designed a new product for surfing that will come into market in May, June, that will not impact surfing performance or surfboard design. And that's the key. You've got to get the products so that people can adopt them without impacting the sport. And I don't think you'll be able to get to a point with, everyone in the water having one. If you touch this, if you're diving, you get a little bit of a shock. Sort of like Listerine giving you a bit of a burn in the mouth. You think that's good for you. So a lot of our users, abalone divers and those, they'll reach around and grab it, and go, oh, yeah, it's working, I feel good, I'm safe, I'm okay.
What about expanding this even further? So that, because at the moment we're relying a lot on shark nets, those drum lines and things like that. Is it possible in the future to have an electric shark fence?
I think the answer is yes, and there's some research being done in South Africa. They actually put one out last year, and they learnt a lot more about its ability to withstand the environment, because unfortunately there wasn't a lot of sharks went by. So they didn't get a lot of interaction with sharks. But look, there's no reason it couldn't be scaled and used. There are some issues with it. I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to use one of these devices if you've got a pacemaker. You know, it is like a little mini electric fence, if you like. You know, we don't advise young children to use them under 12. We don't advise pregnant women to use them. And these are all just safety precautions. There's a lot of research around the field and its strength and everything around the human body. So there are some other issues to consider. Also, our beaches in Australia, you know, on the west coast and on the east coast, I mean, we get some pretty heavy weather. And so anything that you put there needs to be able to withstand that. And when you look at the risk groups, it's surfers and it's divers, spearfishermen. Some 80% of the fatalities around the world are only those two groups. So if you've got a solution that removes the risk from those two groups, you've removed nearly 80% of the problem.
All right, well, you may
Quite
be getting a
significant.
call from a certain Mick Fanny, you never know. Lindsay Lyon.
He's a lucky man, thank you.
Exactly. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the
Pleasure.
time this morning.